Hello, everyone. My name is Sierra Kirk, and I am here today to talk with you about at-risk populations and the culturally diversified group of women. In my Intro to Social Work and Social Welfare 2273-02. Upon speaking about the diversities and the oppressions and sexism, employment and wage variations that women deal with compared to the opposite sex, it's pretty large scale. It's on a pretty large scale. So I decided, though, to speak a little bit about some women of color that have changed history. So I'll briefly touch on some of the women that have changed history. But the reason I chose women as my diversified group is because I'm eager to learn about the ladies who have changed history and who went forth and made a difference and were brave enough to make a stand. Is a very broad topic that I'm passionate about. The women in this slide have cleared the way and made it known that we can change the world. So I did include, like I said, 4 women specifically that I wanted to just highlight that are very inspirational to me and made a difference in history and made it to where some things moving forward have changed. Gender diversity as a whole refers to an even ratio of men and women. Some of the most well-known industry areas that see male employees' dominance over females are compelling. Computing, manufacturing, medicine, and science. Men's and women's equal balance is required for a fair and productive working environment. More commonly not, gender diversity in a workplace means that men and women are hired at a comparable rate, which is almost not ever paid evenly and given the women who account for the same working opportunities and equal promotions. Women who account for 40% of the global workforce, only about 5% of those are in upper management positions. That's across the board, and that's very common. Even then, yearly salaries for men in the same positions are not similar. So with that being said, they're more than likely women will stay in the same job position for years and never make it up the ladder, where men oftentimes they start off higher in the chain of command and make a substantial amount more than women do. And if you were to ask someone outright if that was a thing at their workplace, or if they knew that was happening, that would not be something that in a social setting anyone would admit to, because technically that's not right. So nobody would actually admit to that. Historical experiences of women. This is where I mentioned Wilma Mankiller of the Cherokee Nation tribe, Native American activist, social worker, community developer, and the first woman elected to serve as a principal chief of the Cherokee Nation. I thought she was super inspirational. And Marie Curie, a Polish-French physicist, discovered radium. Rosa Parks, an American activist in the civil rights movement, the Montgomery bus boycott, she refused to give up her bus seat. And if she would not have done that, that would not have changed history. but she made it to where everyone was able to ride the bus of color. Rosie the Riveter, the star of a campaign aimed at recruiting female workers for defense industries during World War II, it was actually not a person. It was like saying everyone can be Rosie the Riveter. Everyone can make a difference. It was a propaganda slogan during World War II because the men were out to war and the women had to step up and work. And that day and time, that was not a commonality and that was not okay. So this woman was the face of every woman. It was putting the face out there to like say, hey, I'm strong enough. I'm a woman. Hear me roar. So, like I said, these women made a substantial mark on history. And they have made some of the biggest changes in our today world just by doing what they did long ago. But over the years, the struggles of women, we've dealt with depression. So Marie Curie often suffered from there was a main rival for the seat was a 6-year-old Edward Branly. So she was a well-renowned physicist, but he was going for her seat. He was always trying to overpower her. And then Rosa Parks suffered from segregation. Wilma Mankiller dealt with others being opposed to her role in a man's position. Employment and wage gaps. So on average, women employed in the United States lose a combined total of nearly $1.6 trillion every year due to the wage gap. 10 of these lost wages mean women and their families have less money to support themselves, save and invest for the future, and spend on goods and services. That's huge. And sexism. Over centuries, women have been suppressed. Their rights were neglected as human beings. They were treated as lower part of society, and their roles were restricted to household chores and birthing. Prolonged oppression raised many voices and collectively led to concept of feminism. Starting the longest movement in history, which still continues, and I think this will be, I'm hoping this is not a forever thing, but this has went on forever. So with that being said, oppression was just to relate back to Marie Curie, Rosa Parks, and Wilma Mankiller. On the macro side of all of these things to do with women, micro is done on a one-to-one basis. This is the first step in traditional treatment in social work. Social workers on this level of treatment are here to protect. Some of the most vulnerable women are still the most vulnerable. So it's here to protect the most vulnerable, but women are still the most vulnerable in that state. Meso level is common community level intervention. The purpose of this is to provide an organizational approach across the board, meaning those in a vulnerable state need a structural guidance, so to speak. Vulnerable populations, for example, would be in rural communities and women of those. So specifically, women that have grown up in a rural community and who have generationally lived by the same things generation after generation. Those types of situations and circumstances are where women would be oppressed, and in the chores, and that reverts back all to those women are supposed to provide for the homestead and do these things rather than be the breadwinners. A macro is ever changing within a large scale machine. So systemic issues on a broad scale that affect a large area or a group entirety of a cultural group or community. So with that said, the macro level is everything that's going on in the behind the scenes, the grand scheme of things, everything that's making a difference on society as a whole. Not just the mom and pop person that you speak to as an individual. It is everything within your community behind the scenes. So macro is very large. It's a very large scale. So speaking for women and advocating and being an activist for women, macro is the large scale for that. Okay, and to end the video here, I'm going to show you guys the scholarly journals are listed here. Any of the information that I've included or have used, I found quite a bit in EBSCOhost, and they are included in the scholarly journals, and the citations, they're all included here. So I appreciate your time.